To FoxNews.com Live. It is the Morning Click. Well, with several recent brutal attacks on Christian communities in Iraq, Egypt, and Nigeria, our man in Rome, Greg Burke, is taking a look at the reasons behind the surge and the lack of protection by foreign governments of the Christian faithful. Good morning, Greg.
Well, it's been
yeah.
Good.
No, I'm just saying is that a lot of people are wondering why this is going on, why now. Why has this escalated seemingly in the last few months?
Yeah, well, I think largely in the Middle East, in any case, hitting Christians is a way of hitting the West, or what the radical Muslims think anyway is hitting the West, a sort of surrogate. Now, that's really not quite fair, because in most of these places, like Egypt and Iraq, where we have seen the worst attacks there, the Christians have been there for the better part of 2,000 years. But in any case, they have used it as sort of that kind of excuse. If, as one guy told us, a specialist, the House of Lords, he said, if you can't hit Westminster, if you can't hit Washington, D.C., well, you hit the Christians there in your own community. They were particularly brutal. I don't know if people remember what happened. The Coptic Church in Alexandria, Egypt, 23 dead just shortly after midnight. So that was a crowded mass just emptying there. And then back in October at Catholic Church in Baghdad, there was actually a siege in that church. They just basically wiped out anyone they could, more than 50 killed there. So the reason behind it is essentially that it's hitting Christians as a way of hitting the West. And also, just in Egypt's case, every country's a little different. In Egypt's case, it certainly does bring instability in any case to the country, because then the president has to come out and sort of say, we will protect the Christians, and that doesn't always gain him favor. So it is a very, very complicated situation, not just Mideast. There's Pakistan as well, a blasphemy law there right now, which anyone accused of insulting the Prophet Muhammad could be sentenced to death. Lauren?
Have any foreign governments reached out to protect the Christians in the Middle East?
Well, it's funny. I mean, Egypt had a weird reaction. It was just last week, I think we spoke about this. The Pope spoke to diplomats, and he was tough he was tough in general. He was just saying, look what happened in Iraq, look what happened in Egypt, let's take care of the Christian minorities. Also called on Pakistan to overrule that blasphemy law. So Egypt responded by recalling its ambassador from the Holy See. They do have diplomatic relations, which is good. Egypt has the biggest Christian community in the Mideast, about 10 million people. But basically, the woman, she gave an interview to somebody before she left. She said, we don't think there is discrimination of Christians in our country, and went off. So the response has not been stellar. It's interesting also talking to the people here. They say, hey, all these countries sign the UN treaties, human rights treaties. Religious freedom is considered a basic human rights, but it's really not respected in most of these countries. Many of these countries, if you convert, you can be sentenced to death.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been hearing about is that is a lot more brutal, these situations for Christians in the Middle East, than is being reported. And one of the things that Waleed Phares said, who is a Middle East expert, he says, usually the U.S. takes the lead in these kinds of human rights issues, and they're not. Has that been an issue for these Christians? And why isn't the U.S. stepping up and at least in rhetoric saying more?
Yeah, I think it is an issue, Lauren. We did this story 4 or 5 years ago. We went to Egypt, we went to Turkey, and there in Egypt, we were interviewing a guy, and basically he broke down in tears. He talked about how his son-in-law had been taken off by the police, basically what he considered a religious reason. That he had helped some people who had converted from Christianity to Islam, then come back to the church. He had sort of helped them back into the church. Before that, was taken away, thrown in prison. As an American, you sort of felt helpless there. You said, hey, Egypt's a country we give a heck of a lot of money to every year, and why is the U.S. not raising its voice a little stronger here? I think that can be said throughout the world as well, but probably especially in the Mideast. And yeah, they do feel that, but they're often stuck. Somebody told me that some of the Egyptian Christians were actually a little scared when the Pope spoke out, because they thought that might make it worse for them. But obviously, if Christians are being essentially exterminated in these places, somebody does have to speak up.
Yeah, one of the things that seems very strange about the Egyptian reaction to the Pope's speech was that they seem to be offended by this. I mean, it would have been acceptable, or you would have expected them to say, well, I understand your concern, but we're handling it. I mean, they really kind of went over the top on that reaction. I mean, doesn't it seem that way?
Yeah, Yeah, but it's the weird reality there on the ground, you know. But at the same time, people don't know what's going on. The fact of the matter, you need a government decree in order to repair a church in Egypt. That's another story we did. We saw this ramshackle church there. You know, it all makes things very complicated. On your ID card, it's what religion you're written there, which obviously means if you're a minority Christian, you're going to be treated as such as a minority. So I think, you know, clearly the story does have to get out.
Yeah, very much so. Thank you very much, Greg Burke in Rome, keeping track of the situation over there. Thank you very much.